Hello and welcome. I am the Letterhack, and with me now are two very special guests: Pulitzer Prize finalist, political cartoonist, and creator of the long-running comic strip Mr. Gotcha. It's Matt Bors, and filmmaker and illustrator whose work can be seen on Adult Swim and Vice Noisey, as well as the original creator of the comic book series they collaborate on and are here to talk about today, Justice Warriors, Ben Carlson. Matt, Ben, thank you so much for being here. How are you guys?
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
Now,
having us. It's Ben Clarkson.
Clarkson, yes,
The
sorry. Okay,
son of Clark.
so
It's fine. I don't worry
I
about it.
I build in a bad intro because then the show can only improve.
Yeah.
That's my I'm just gonna divulge a little behind the scenes for anyone watching. But no, seriously, sorry about that. Ben Clarkson, of course. So Ben, this was your original creation, right? The book we're talking about, this came from your brain?
Yeah. It's something that I'd been working on for a long time as an idea for an animated series. And I was really just doing it in a basement by myself in the dark for a long time. And after sort of pulling myself up by my bootstraps and pitching it to all the networks, and people didn't really bite on it because it's really hard to understand what something is, especially when you're a total outsider to the industry. Because I haven't worked formally in the animation industry. I make animation, but not for any of the big players. It was hard for people to understand what this thing would be, and so I showed it to Matt because I was trying to just self-produce it because that's what I do. I just make things myself. I'm a bit of an anarchist in that sense, so I'm just gonna start. I don't want someone's permission to make art, so I started trying to kickstart it. I wanted somebody else on board, bigger names, because people don't know my work. I haven't done a very good job at telling people about all the cool stuff I could probably make. And so I asked Matt to take a look at it because I was a huge fan of his work. I was a huge fan of his Wasteland stuff that he was doing with Trump at the time. And Matt really responded well to it, and he hopped on board. Do you want to say more about how much you love Justice Warriors and me?
Yeah, how is
Yeah.
it when you've been working on your own stuff, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were writing and drawing your own work, and then
Mhm.
somebody wants to collaborate. Are you resistant to that? Do you have to kind of work through it, process the idea, or do you jump right in?
No, it depends. I've collaborated with people before. I
Right.
illustrated a graphic novel called War's Boring, written by a journalist, David Axe. I had written and produced some nib animations during the Trump years. That was really fun. Those were all collaborative. And I had been moving toward wanting to do more collaborative comics. I mean, specifically creator-owned stuff, with either me writing or me drawing. And Ben kind of hit me up at the right time, because I was already thinking about quitting political cartoons, which I did the following year in 2021, and he wrote me in 2020, and it was a crazy year. And I was like, I mean, I loved it. We have a lot of the same influences, right? I mean, it's dystopian, sci-fi, mutants, crazy stuff. So between our artistic and pop culture influences and our politics, like Ben and I got along, and we just started generating all these ideas for Justice Warriors. So we decided to pitch it as a comic book, which I guaranteed Ben we could actually get made.
Wow.
And I'm a comic book guy. I mean, Ben's an animator primarily, but now he's a comic book artist. But I love animation. I mean, we do kind of still want to get Justice Warriors made into an animated movie or show, but as a comic, it's a lot easier to just get it done. So we pitched to publishers and hooked up with Ahoy, and it's been great. We did one volume. We have the second volume cooking right now that comes out in the fall, called Justice Warriors Vote Harder. And I almost guarantee that we're going to do more after that, especially if people pre-order it.
Great. Okay, that is a question that I have for you, and I want to
Yeah.
talk about the book more and collaborations more. But um, let's let's go back. I always
Yeah.
like to get my guest origin story. How did you guys first gravitate to whether it was animation or comics? Can you remember maybe the first time you were like, I love this. I want to contribute to this medium. This is for me. Did that happen, in childhood? Was it fairly recent?
Comics or
Or just like, if it
yeah.
was comics or animation or both, when
Well,
did you
yeah,
decide
I've
you wanted
always
to do it commercially?
I mean, I decided I wanted to be a comic book artist, or
Right away.
creator,
Yeah.
you know, when I don't know, 3, 4, right? I don't know. My whole life I've been obsessed with it. Been making comics since I was a little kid, and I've worked professionally full time since I was 19. So doing different stuff, mostly the political cartoons, and I've done a few self-published books. I did a graphic novel. I ran the Nib for 10 years, and now I'm doing entirely creator-owned comics. And I guess they're not all creator-owned because I'm writing a Toxic Avenger series, so I don't own that. But
That's
I'm getting to
exciting.
do what I
Yeah.
want with it, kind of. So it feels like me. So yeah. And as far as animation, I mean, I've always had a real interest in it and loved it. Um, I was big into, the early anime stuff like Ghost in the Shell and Akira was very formative for me. MTV's Liquid Television, Eon Flux. Again, these are a lot of influences that Ben and I share. And yeah, I've never created any of it. And I don't think I have at this point. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to learn how to be an animator, but I do still love animation and want to create for it. Like, I mean, writing a Justice Warriors animated movie would be a dream, and something that we actively want to try to get to.
There's no
Animation's
shortage.
easy. Animation's easy. You could do it, Matt. It's simple. An
It is.
hour,
I mean,
you'd be great.
the
Yeah,
effects are
I've made a few
more
gifs before.
affordable. Gifts.
I've made a
There you
few
go. Well,
gifs.
that's where you start. But I do. There's no shortage of adaptations, and I love when things start as a comic and then become something else because it generally draws people back to the comics. No pun intended. But Ben, for you, when did you get the bug?
It's been a little bit of an unnatural journey. When I was a kid, I drew comic books. I remember very vividly getting a copy of Spider-Man: The Clone Wars, like a floppy, but not even like a number one. Just because like my parents bought it for me, I saw it at a drugstore, and I was like, I love Spider-Man because I loved the toy animation TV show. I was really into like cartoons. I was really into animation. The idea that you could make animation up until even recently in my life was an unthinkable thing. But I loved comics. I didn't get to read a lot of them because my parents wouldn't buy them for me. But I loved animation when I got to watch it on TV. And then eventually I got to art school and they told me that comic books are low art and garbage and I shouldn't try to make them. And that animation was impossible and garbage and I shouldn't try to make it. And so they tried to make me into like a fine artist who would make paintings for Jeffrey Epstein or whatever.
Wow.
And eventually I sort of realized
And
this
that's how
sucks.
Ben found himself on
Yeah.
the Lolita Express.
Oh, you're on the manifest. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the black book technically, but under a pseudonym. Yeah, and then eventually I gave up on that type of art making, and I had sort of like a coming to Jesus moment, mostly out of desperation of like, oh, people really like drawings, people really like enjoying culture, and you should make culture for people rather than rich people who aren't people. Uh, and so and I'd always really loved film and I could draw really well. And it seemed crazy that I'd never like said like I love animation, I love film, I love to draw. Maybe I should learn how to animate. And that was really tough because I didn't go to school for it. I just taught myself, and it's been a journey of figuring out like, oh, I really should have just gone back to school. And then Matt, when he suggested Justice Warriors as a comic, I had thought like, oh, I should go into comics because I really like stories. Stories and drawing seem to work really well together. I'm really interested in that stuff. And I'd read a bunch of books on how to make comics. I'd read this Scott McCloud books, but I and I'd done some comics on my own, but I'd never really gotten into the professional thing. And when Matt said we should do this as a comic book, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could draw a comic book. I guess I could do that. And now I love it. It's a great art form. And I'm always trying to understand it a little bit more so I can,
Well,
so people
yeah.
can have fun with it.
I mean, for people who haven't seen Justice Warriors, I mean, Ben's art is, off the charts. I mean, it's crazy that this is his first professional comic book. And what I like, I mean, to just sort of blow smoke up my collaborator's ass,
Please, it feels
is
good.
that he comes from a film and animation mindset, but he does really get comics. And then one of the trends in comics over the years in the early 2000s, especially, was to make them cinematic, and the widescreen action and things like that were popular at the time. But Ben, I think Ben approaches it differently and actually thinks about comic book pages as pages. And in the new volume, where there's some real, I think there's some really amazing layouts. It would be boring if I just described them for a story everybody doesn't know, but they're good, trust me.
I do want to ask you about this because it is so detailed. The writing and the art is so detailed. There are certain scenes where my wrist hurts just looking at it. And then like some of the outside of Bubble City, it's very detailed. And I just have to wonder whether it's the writing part of it or the art part of it. When the storytelling is this detailed, does that present its own challenges? Any unique time constraints? Does it take longer than normal? I mean, or are you impressing everyone involved with how quickly you can draw this stuff and write this stuff?
Both.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Ben can speak to the art. I mean, it's incredibly highly detailed, and that's part of the world.
Is it written that way? Did you say this needs to be incredibly highly detailed, or does it just like how's the script versus the page illustrations?
Well, we script it very closely together as well. Like we're both
Okay.
100% on board with the script. Very little of the script happens just one of us. Every joke goes through multiple iterations. We punch it up a lot. And because it's also I feel as though it's fully ours. Like Matt can, if Matt wanted to draw a page, I'd be like, fine, do it. It's your choice.
Well, I
Like,
do it. I have a
and he
backup
does
in the
draw pages. Yeah.
first volume, and I tried to match what Ben is doing, and bring my A game to the level of detail, because I think it's just I mean, it's kind of a trap we created for ourselves, because the world itself is a character, and the world is Bubble City, sort of megatropolis future city where there's no crime and everybody's living great, and there's diversity and prosperity, and you know uh, games for everyone.
Low interest rates.
Yeah, low interest rates. And then outside of the bubble is the uninhabited zone, which is an endless slum filled with mutants of every variety, not just anything you can think of, but also like anthropomorphic broccoli and literal cartoons that are like tunes. So that means that every character has to have a different design, and it's all densely packed slums and or densely packed high rises inside the bubble, and weird futuristic stuff. And and there's a lot of cops and riots and protests and stuff. I mean, when we write it, though, to answer your question, I mean, every character is not detailed. It's the scripting is not overdone at all. I mean, Ben brings a lot of that when he's drawn. He riffs on all sorts of characters, and I mean, he was wild.
Yeah, I feel like the detail makes the world feel more real, and I feel like you're much more willing to take the satire, the jokes about the big picture stuff, take that stuff more seriously if we've detailed the little picture stuff. Like if there's lots of Easter eggs and jokes and interesting characters, if there's a lot for you, then the joke, these overarching jokes of like, because we're making fun of like the structure of the economy. Like a big part of the first volume of Justice Warriors is basically a critique of the central bank. Like that's the overarching joke. But then if you put a lot of little jokes through there, it doesn't seem as, in my opinion anyways, it doesn't seem as though that's directly what we're doing. And so there ends up being more to look at, more to the satire than just a political critique. It ends up being a critique of society, aesthetics, violence, how we portray violence. It makes the world feel more filled in.
The first series came out in February 2023. As we were saying, it was published by Ahoy Comics. I encourage everyone to seek that out. There will be links in the description of this video, so please do not hesitate. It is described as a scathing satire of capitalism and police in a future of severe inequality. It's, a lot of folks watching aren't, I'm trying to bring people in who aren't regular comic book readers. And so, could you explain a little bit about universe building, what that means to you, and particularly this story, and whether or not, like, are you guys sitting around watching the news and then texting each other, "Oh, hey, did you see this story? We got to work that in," or are you taking inspiration from real life and the headlines while universe building?
A little bit. I mean, I come from the world of constantly responding to news headlines with my
Mhm.
work in political cartooning. So for me, it feels like a big step back to actually write a fictional world. I mean, we're definitely riffing off of things that happen. I mean, the first volume, for instance, deals with. So we started writing it in 2020. I mean, it deals with social media cults, for lack of a better word, conspiracy theories, social movements, economic booms and busts, things that are investment trends that seem, very similar to crypto and NFTs. So we are satirizing our world, but I think we're doing it at a little bit of a remove in a, I guess, if you're not, it's like RoboCop cranked up
Yeah.
is what it is.
It's sort
It's
of it's a critique of society rather than the
yeah.
news. Like
Yeah.
our society produces the news we get. We're critiquing society, and so sometimes we even have preempted the news, like things that have been in the book. And we're drawing volume 2 right now and looking at the news and being like, "Oh, this is insane!" Like we literally are predicting everything that's going on, and so it's going to look like we ripped it from the headlines, but we're ahead of the curve, actually. But
Which can be hard. I do see stuff in the news sometimes though, and I'm like, oh, or, I don't know, the beginning of a trend. Let's say, oh no, somebody's gonna start a leaf blower outside of my window. I don't
It's
know if
okay.
you
It's
can
a
hear
leaf
that.
blower friendly show. We're fine. Yeah.
we're,
Dogs, leaf
we're
blowers, babies, it's
gas
all acceptable.
powered. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess the what I wanted to say was that I do see stuff in the news sometimes, and I think of what is the Justice Warriors version of this.
yes.
Hmm.
So yeah, we're always banking ideas.
Um, Chapo Trap House's co-host Will Menaker said, "If you had your developing mind warped by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, GI Joe, RoboCop, and comic books, and then had it further destroyed by Twitter and social media, then Justice Warriors will fill those holes in your brain." I thought that was a great description. Is making this series at all cathartic? Does it help you work through the pitfalls and downfalls of our society?
Matt and I regularly text each other, and we're like, "Oh, what is to be done?" We're Lenin texting each other, and the only thing that we can think of to do is Justice Warriors. And the position I've gotten to is art is there to make you feel like you're not alone. We are stuck in a this is my point of view anyways. We are stuck in a material process. We're stuck as history works its way out. Nobody knows what to do. We're crushed under these insane forces. You can at least have a little laugh. You can have a Justice Warriors as a treat.
I wonder if well, not most, but some collaborations are just you stay in your lane, I'll stay in my lane. You write it, I'll draw it. And that does not seem to be the case with you guys whatsoever. This is more like a long road trip where you're taking turns at the wheel, right? How does that is that as great as it sounds? Is there any aspect of it where it's like, okay, well, I wish maybe I could just stay in my lane for a little bit?
No,
Or
not necessarily. You can hear that it's not a leaf blower; it's a chainsaw. You can hear
it's
that,
Right.
right?
fine. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not gonna ruin
It's
anything.
fine.
Don't worry
Okay,
about it.
it's
Yeah.
pretty loud to me. But anyway, no, I think this is a great collaboration. I mean, it's the kind of collaboration you want when you are the kind that I want, I guess, as a creator.
Mhm.
So, as Ben said, we co-write it, which begins with discussions and then plotting and then actual scripting and then rewriting, which we do a significant amount of. And then Ben does draw it himself. I will sometimes sketch an idea for a page or something like that because I'm a comic book artist, but I mean he pretty much draws it, and then Felipe Sobrero colors it. He's really great, and then I letter it. So there's a lot of collaboration involved, but it's mostly in the writing process, I guess, is where the actual collaboration happens. And I think what you get in any good collaboration is a little bit of both creators. And if I was doing Justice Warriors entirely by myself, it would be kind of different than if Ben was doing it entirely by himself. And what you're getting is a meeting of our minds, hopefully the best parts of them, creating this insane world.
Do you have a safe word or like a cutoff word for, hey, we got to stop throwing ideas back and forth and just get down to business? Like, how long does an issue take if you can just keep throwing ideas around? I mean, do you have like a file for volume 3 underway?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. More than that even.
It's very focused in the sense that we don't try to put all of our ideas in one book because we have too many ideas to fit into any book. Even the first book, which is very, very fast paced with how many ideas come at you, we had to cut a lot from that book to fit in what we actually, the concise story that we end up telling. More and more, I think that the book is they're focused. Like we know what we want to do, and when we don't know what we want to do, we keep going back and forth over it until an idea becomes clear of like what is important about this page, what are we accomplishing in each panel, and that's part of the process, which is what I think is really strong about the collaboration. Is Matt will have an idea and he'll go through, and then I will take his idea and bake it and give it back to him, and then sometimes we have to go back and forth baking the idea. Even I think one of this, what was it, issue 3 in the new one, that it went through 6 or 7 drafts just to figure out one specific page and how we were going to make it interesting. And it really works now, but I'm sure it would have worked at the beginning, but we have a very clear idea of how tightly we want it to be realized.
Yeah. As the other ideas, writing the other ideas down. I mean, we kind of do that constantly whenever inspiration strikes, I guess, or we get a good idea. We have many volumes planned. Some of them are sort of just big ideas, because the conceit with Justice Warriors is essentially that each volume is going to focus on a different aspect of society. So the first one was sort of economic booms and busts and social movements. Second volume is an election in Bubble City, and we're going to so imagine us touching on various things, right? What is sports like in this world? What is the drug trade like in this world? That's what we want to do. And then we have a folder of ideas that are like, okay, well, this is not a 120-page story. This is like a one issue story. Or we even have some that are like, this is like a short story, like a 5-page story. I did one for the backup of the first volume, and I'd love to do more stuff like that. So it just depends how much Justice Warriors people want. We will deliver.
What about spin-offs? Can you see any one character that would make for, their own comic?
I was thinking the Chief could have her own spin-off even just
Mm.
yesterday. Like, because the Chief is sort of a cross between RoboCop and Inspector Gadget. And I just thought that we need to see more.
Yeah, more Inspector Gadget. That's good.
Yeah, more Inspector Gadget stuff from the Chief. So for the audience, the Chief is like a girl boss uh, police chief. Classic, no guff taken lady boss, but she's also a obsessively online cyborg who's basically low jacked into Twitter. And
Yeah, she can't not check her mentions.
yeah, they're printed on the back of her eyelids.
Yeah. So she is constantly distracted. But yeah, I would like to do even a one shot of all the main characters.
That'd be great.
We have the main characters, Swamp and Shit, our cops. Swamp is a kind of a swamp monster, and Shit is made of shit. He's an anthropomorphic piece of shit whose head looks like the poop emoji. And Shit though is SCHITT. It's the from the German. And we've joked before. So he's like a family man. He kind of has a hot wife and a bunch of little shitlings. So I want to do like little shits. That's like a family, almost like a Simpsons family drama, but it would be like, I don't know, he would be suspended for a police involved shooting or something, and then without pay, and then they'd have to scrounge up, they'd have to work some crazy job with the kids to try to make ends meet. So it would be like Simpsons for Blue Lives Matter, but making fun of it.
Would you ever allow, I mean, I love all of these ideas. I would literally buy and read all of this stuff. But would you ever allow another creator to handle any of this?
Yeah, sure. If it's the right person, like you have to be not precious with your ideas. That's my attitude towards it. Because if I was too precious, would I let people get involved in this crazy? Like, there's a spectrum, right? I could be a crazy person and sit in my basement and say everything has to be my way, but then I'm not going to invite Matt in. I'm not going to invite our editor Tom to make edits to what we're doing. You in my opinion, if you want people to get really excited about something, you have to let them own it to a certain extent. So I'm 100% fine if somebody wants to make little shits as like a Family Matters sitcom. I'm down. I will watch it.
So
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I could see allowing other writers or cartoonists to do some Justice Warrior stuff. I mean, I definitely feel like Ben and I have enough ideas and drive to do a volume a year kind of indefinitely. That's sort of the plan. If it's popular enough, or if we want to take a break or something and get even bigger names involved, especially, but people who have the kind of the mindset for Justice Warriors, or there's a lot of artists in particular I could see doing a great job with the kind of crazy mutant world and level of detail we have. So, sure. It would be, if we were ever put in that position, it would be a sign of Justice Warriors being as successful as we want it to be.
Yeah, I'll just check the proofs from Little St. James.
Yeah, and Frank Quietly and whatnot. Yeah, we'll get those series in the works soon.
I would like to see Grant Morrison take on Shits. I think that would be very interesting, but I don't, it's up to you. And it is.
Let's get him. Look, volume 4. We can do a Morrison Quietly run. I would, be willing to put my ego aside for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll slum it.
I mean, and all jokes aside, it really is. Justice Warriors is a type of book where you read it and you're like, I don't want anyone to mess with this. This is so good as is that I want these guys writing and drawing it, because you know how it is with diehard comics fans. When they change the artist, you're like, nah, you're ruining the book, right? And you just
Yeah.
got to get used to it. But like I also I wonder about editorial chores, because like the premise is so wild and funny and hilarious. You really got to be careful. Like, I wonder if you're getting a lot of notes, or like, hey, you can't do this, or we got to revise this. And does that play havoc with your concept?
Zero
No.
notes.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
No,
That's how
we
it
have
should
like
be.
we have very you mean like editorially, like content
Well,
wise, or just
no, like from the publisher. Yeah. Are they
Mhm.
telling you like this is clunky, or it's not going to land, or we're not going to, or it's too far? I don't know. I mean, you
No,
got a poop emoji for the guy's head. It's sort of like,
They were hesitant about that, but
oh, okay.
we had dinner with Hart Seeley, our publisher, a few months back, and he was saying like, I didn't know how I felt about having a main character who was poop, but people love him.
Yeah. And now that they do,
yeah. Well,
you
I
can't
think
really rein it back in,
Oh
right?
no.
I mean, Justice Warriors is one of those things where we're trying to make it over the top and silly, and also, serious and political in parts. I mean, I would say that it's probably the most political comic on the stands, I might say. I don't know, but it's also like there's a poop guy, and there's crude jokes, and it's action. And also, it focuses on cops. It's just the type of thing that I don't think these exact combination of things exist in another comic, and that's what hopefully makes it unique.
Yeah, it's a bit like everyday politics meets 70s psychedelia and like a Ralph Bakshi film. It's
Wow.
There's not a lot like it, but I was just naive enough to picture doing something like this.
So I wonder, with this comic, all your work, the political and social commentary, were what motivated you to build on that, or to create something? Was it what? I could speculate, but you tell me. Is there a main reason why you did that, or did it just sort of happen organically?
I feel like it's a little, for me, from the genesis of it, it was very organic. Like I felt like I needed to make art about something, because you can have like some content to your art, or you can just be interested in like a formal exploration. uh I felt like it needed something. Like, I'm fascinated with these things. I'm a news head. I was an article guy. I would read articles. I'd be interested in the news, and I was interested in like, why are things going wrong? Like, what's going on? Why the hell is everything happening? And through that process of trying to figure that shit out, I was putting it into the work that I was designing. And now I can't imagine not doing that with it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like Justice Warriors is super interesting if it would be a straight procedural. Then it's just a straight procedural with monsters, which I think loses some of its fascination.
Yeah, and for me, I was transitioning from political cartoons, so I mean, it's obviously not that big of a leap to to make a very political uh comic book. I mean,
But why political cartoons? What made you want to do political cartoons?
well, I wanted to do comics before I was political, when I was 4, before I got woke, and the types of comics I wanted to do changed over time. So when I was a kid, I wanted to do X-Men and Spawn, and I still do, frankly, want to do both of those things. And then when I was a teenager and young adult, I got into, Dan Klaus and Adrian Tomine and Chris Ware, and also Frank Miller and Watchmen and that type of stuff. And then what happened was the 9/11 happened, and the US was, specifically the Iraq war, I got real hyped up about, mad. It wasn't good. So that happened in 2003. I was 19, and I started drawing political cartoons for my college newspaper at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, sort of a scam school that got closed down last year. And Biden just forgave the loans, like a billion in student loans for Art Institute graduates. Unfortunately, I was before the cutoff, and I've had my loans paid off. But I digress. Then I just started doing political cartoons, and I didn't stop for 18 years, almost 19.
It's a long time.
So
Yeah.
I did 1,600 of them in a row, and I was pretty done by the end of it. I didn't want to do them for the rest of my life. I got to be honest. I had been gravitating towards sort of genre fiction for a while. It was the type of, my love of it never left. I was professionally known for political cartoons. I had some success with it, but the desire to do other things became stronger and stronger over time, and I'm glad I stopped, and I'm doing something like Justice Warriors. I think it's a more effective, not to no diss on political cartoonists. Some of my best friends are political cartoonists, but it's a limit. It's very limiting. It's not. There's no narrative. There's no story. I think you can disagree with Justice Warriors. I think you can disagree with our politics and our points and enjoy it because it's fun and well drawn and there's a ton of action. A political cartoon, I don't think you can do that.
No, with what you were saying, Matt, one of the things that brought me to this approach to Justice Warriors is also my love of Michael Bay movies. And Michael Bay movies are like political cartoons, but they're a little bit like right-wing political cartoons. I'm not going to use a Michael Bay movie as an example, but I was watching the reboot of Godzilla.
Like the 98 one?
Not the 98 one, the next one after that. The start of the new Godzilla cycle. And the theme of Godzilla is like nuclear anxiety. And literally the hero defeats Godzilla by lighting his babies on fire with oil and gas. Right. And I pointed that out in the theater, and my brother-in-law was like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And I use that as an example of there's these subtle political jokes within stories. There's these logics within stories that present political points of view, whether we like it or not. Like, the world is political, and we make sense of stories through the politics we understand. So why wouldn't Matt and I do that consciously? Why wouldn't we make the logic of the world? And that's what is great about the setting of Bubble City, is that you can't do a story in Bubble City without it being a political story, because the politics and the inequality and the logic of that world is so stark and such a, in interesting ways, such a revelatory comparison to our current world, that political stories come out automatically. And so we're just surfing that wave. We set up our little world where we can't not do political stories, and we just try to tell interesting Michael Bay movie stories in that insane world.
Ben, I don't know if you're this kind of person, but have you sent comps back to those instructors from art school just to show them I made it? Haha. Rub it in
The
their
only one
face a
I
bit.
really liked is Dead from COVID, which
I meant to get back at them for, well, that's tragic, but to get back at them for saying that, it's lowbrow, waste of time.
Yeah, I try not to be bitter about it, because
Was it motivating?
there's like a low level radiation of motivation that comes from like, I'll show them. They'll invite me back as a speaker at the school someday, and I'll show them all. Spite gets you pretty far, but spite doesn't really make you a perfectionist, and I feel like you need to be a perfectionist. But yeah, spite is nice. It's nice to, but it like, if I'm gonna pull that question apart a bit, the idea of making art for regular people is really frowned on in some educational institutions, especially in Canada. There's no arts funding for people who want to make art for regular human beings. Like if you say like, oh, this would be a popular book, or I want to make like a film that could end up on television that people would enjoy that fits in with a genre, there's no support for it. It's only rich vampires and people who go to film festivals that get to be supported or get good grades or rewarded by institutions. I prefer Justice Warriors fans than university professors.
Yeah, I like.
Nice.
We describe it as sort of mashing together highbrow and lowbrow stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. It's also very smart. It's very witty. Humor without wit is lost on me personally, but I think it's great. So, it's co-written by both you, as we've been saying, illustrated by Ben with colors by Felipe Sobrero, and lettered by Matt. And you know what? Just curious, do you take a final pass on the dialogue and narration in the lettering? Because that's got to be a real leg up to do it on your own, right?
Yeah, it doesn't come down to nitpicking or rewriting for rewriting's sake, but often when I'm laying out the letters, things will naturally occur, like we're repeating a phrase, or
Mhm.
this panel is way too wordy, and I'll sort of take all of the items from an issue I'm lettering and send them to Ben and Tom and be like, okay, we need to rewrite this sentence. I took out this word here because it didn't quite sound right to me, and so it's pretty minimal. But yeah, we're making changes.
Artful pruning, maybe.
Yeah.
Is a way to say. Okay, well, this is great. Thank you so much for being here. Justice Warriors Vote Harder is out September 11th, right?
Yeah.
Of this year.
The big day.
I mean, it's new comic book day is new
Never
comic book
forget.
day.
Yeah, we wanted a date that people would never forget.
Right. Yeah.
And I gotta say too, man, I realized yesterday, because we're talking about Biden and these protests and everything, and I was just thinking, well, first of all, things don't seem great for this election and the
Right.
summer heating up with protests. And I was thinking, the DNC is in Chicago this year. I mean, what could go wrong? And Justice Warriors comes out 2 weeks later, and I feel like we'll just be an election craziness then. Who even knows what will be going on with Trump and his trials and Gaza and Biden. And I feel like Justice Warriors Vote Harder isn't about Trump and Biden, but I think it's going to capture the madness of the election really well.
Yeah, it's definitely the book for the moment. I really recommend, if people are listening to this and want to see more of Vote Harder, to pre-order the book, because Justice Warriors, when it's released, has a habit of selling out really quickly. We do have problems. Just-in-time production has issues dealing with the spikes of demand for the book that it has generated.
Okay.
So pre-orders really help with our publisher understanding how many to print and how many to get out there, because we have actually had a lot of issues. The first volume sold out after a month and was out of print for like 3 months after that, just trying to keep up, which is, I think, unheard of for a new comic. So please pre-order. Pre-order is a great way of actually getting your hands on the book.
Yeah, we will be pushing this book pretty hard here. We love to do this, and I'll put it on the Discord, all the social medias. We'll air this interview, and then we'll probably re-air this interview closer to the release date. But if there's ever any desire or need to come back on the show, even for just 15, 20 minutes, feel free to hit me up and we can make that happen.
We should do a hit around the time when it comes out. I feel like that window between 9/11 and the election is going to be
Let's do it.
going to be Vote Harder time. And
cool
I
zone.
mean, I think you should pre-order it, because what do you want to do on 9/11? Huh? You want to read a great comic book, I think, is how you should spend it, reflecting and filling your mind with goodness.
I
So
think that's a
anyway,
great note to
I
end
won't.
on, unless there's anything else you want to plug, or
No,
this
that's good.
this will air in a couple of weeks. It'll be after Free Comic Book Day. But do you guys do regular events or anything like that? Cons?
I
No,
really
I mean,
struggle to leave the house. Yeah.
I do some cons, not a lot. I mean, I'm doing TCAF in a week actually in Toronto, so
Oh,
I'll have
cool.
Justice Warriors there, and I do a couple shows a year, but yeah, I'm not a ton.
Well, thanks again for coming on, and thanks everyone for watching. We will see you next time.
Hey, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.